Let's get started. First off, hello everyone, and welcome to the first installment of the Future of Field webinar series, Planning Amidst Uncertainty. My name is Paige Robinson. I'm the head of product marketing here at Pinata. For those of you who are not familiar with Pinata, we provide powerful and easy to use software, purpose-built for industry experts to manage their tasks and goals, measure outcomes, and maximize ROI. Common applications include demos and samplings, shopper marketing, trade promotions, merchandising, and so much more. This webinar is brought to you in partnership with Force Brands, a leading recruitment firm and job marketplace for consumer brands. We're so excited to get this conversation going. First off, thank you to everyone for joining us today. Everyone who has participated in our Future of Field survey will be sharing those results following this event. If you haven't had the opportunity to participate in the survey, we'll be posting a link in the webinar chat. One thing is for sure, everyone wants to know what's happening in field marketing, where it's going, what they should be doing, and how are they going to plan for the future. Hence why we're having this conversation today. A few interesting findings that I'd like to share with everyone from our survey. A majority of respondents say that their efforts during the pandemic, whether they be digital campaigns, coupons, shipping directly to their consumers, were less successful compared to their in-person field marketing efforts. That being said, there was a resounding response from companies saying that field marketing needed to be more strategic, more integrated with their broader marketing initiatives, and more efficient in its execution. We also saw that companies would like to be more data-driven. We couldn't agree more. A few housekeeping items that I'd like to go over before we get started. We'll be hosting a Q&A near the end of the session, so please use that function to submit any questions that you may have. We'll also be doing a poll throughout the event, so keep an eye out for that as well. If you have any questions about the webinar or how to utilize Pinata, please feel free to reach out to us at hello@gopinata.com. It's my pleasure to now introduce Lauren Doyle, your moderator for the event. Lauren is a 20-year events and CPG guru. She has worked with large brands like Red Bull, Coca-Cola, and Go-Go Squeeze, just to name a few. She's worked with smaller brands as well, and it's from that experience that she found brands thrive when they cultivate raving fans. This was the inspiration that led her to found the Booster Club to help find ways to bring consumer experiences to the gig economy. Lauren also leads business development here at Pinata. And with that, I'll hand things over to you, Lauren.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Paige. So excited to be with everybody today. I'm just loving watching the participant count tick up. So far we have 164 field marketing loving participants, and it's my pleasure to be your Oprah Winfrey for the next hour and guide the conversation. And first I want to start off by introducing our amazing panelists. We're going to have such a good conversation, but the thing I want to say for Paige and Josh and everybody on the Pinata team is that there is a lot of commitment to helping be a support, not only through the tools that Pinata has available, but just really using this webinar series to be a support and basically a home base for all of the field marketers out there that are looking to see what's next. So excited to introduce two amazing panelists today. First of all, Vivian Wang is with us from California, right?
Yes, that's right. Hi guys.
So Vivian right now is the Director of Experience at Implant. She has about 15 years of experience in CPG and in marketing, and has worked with many brands. She is a lover of field marketing, currently working in the cannabis space, and she can tell you that navigating field marketing in the cannabis space is its own special challenge. She really promotes strategy and growth of new products in the market through field marketing, and also has her own food blog called She Loves Sweets. So, welcome, Vivian. Thank you for joining us today. We're so excited to hear from you. Also, in a totally different space. So this is what I love about this group, is that it's there's a lot of different perspectives. Is Tony Flanagan? Tony, where are you located?
I'm based in Chicago.
So Tony's joining us from probably chilly Chicago today. He is the U.S. Trade Marketing Manager for Mr. Black Spirits. Tony has been working in field marketing with on-premise and off-premise marketing for spirits brands, and now is at Mr. Black, which is, I didn't know this, the #1 ultra premium coffee liqueur in the United States. I wish we could all be sampling some right now, Tony. But he's also worked in the spirit space with Heaven Hill Distilleries and in the beer space with Corona. So lots of experience with how to connect with consumers. I think this is going to be such a great discussion. And let's start out with the first and most obvious question. And Tony, this one we'll start with you. One of the things that we want to know is, it's early March 2020. You have this marketing plan, like a good field marketer. You've got your calendar, you've got your budget, everything's going according to plan. And so talk to us a little bit about how you thought 2020, or how you were setting up 2020 for success, and then how you pivoted quickly into the spring and to now.
Well, thank you so much. So Mr. Black is the cold brew coffee liqueur. It started in 2012, and we pioneered the cold brew coffee trend in the U.S. Quickly soon after, Jameson and Jaeger launched their own cold brews. All of us going after the same consumer in the on-premise market. Mr. Black was primarily going after Tia Maria and Kahlua to go as the premier ultra premium spirit to be used in the espresso martini. And so it started in Australia and expanded to Asia, UK, and then to the US. We started a few years ago. In February 2020, 80% of Mr. Black's volume came from the on-premise. By April, the number of accounts that purchased Mr. Black was less than 10. We had so much momentum in February invested in the on-premise, and especially in hotels, that was decimated. By January 2020, as well, 20% of Mr. Black sales came from the off-premise. And then by November, that number went to 90%. We managed to increase our overall velocity in a difficult year. One of the contributing factors to our success was our investment in Pinata and our agency partners with in-store tastings. This investment allowed us to increase our velocity in our current network of retailers and expand into more national chain accounts. And according to the latest Nielsen report, because of this investment with Pinata and our investment in in-store tastings, we were able to become the #1 ultra premium coffee spirit and growing at 264% this year. We started back our field marketing efforts in August with in-store tastings in Texas and Florida. We were following their local regulations for COVID, and it allowed us to do in-store tastings in those markets. We've had a great success in those markets, and we're able to, even though the numbers of consumer samples have been lower, we're maintaining a very high conversion rates at 17%. So the local teams are really doing a great job pushing our product and growing our sales.
Tony, what does sampling look like in Texas? I mean, for those of us that are not using sampling and market, what does it look like?
So there is the glass barriers in front of all the tasting agent samples. All of the sampling agents are wearing masks and gloves, and then they're only allowed to pour samples neat, and they have it pre-poured, and then the consumer can grab it from the table. So it is very safe. The samplers feel safe enough to sample, to pour it, and then the consumer feels safe enough to sample it, just lifting their mask. Because I think in Texas, they're also required to have a lot of these chains have their own laws and regulations where they require consumers even to enter the store. They have to be wearing a mask to enter. So as long as they're able to sample it safely within 6 feet apart, they feel like it can happen. So hopefully the same strategy can happen for the rest of the country soon.
Absolutely. So it sounds like you're getting a head start and just learning what works and what doesn't work, and how you have to be extra careful. So we'll talk a little bit more about what sampling looks like moving forward a little bit later. But wanted to go to Vivian and talk a little bit about your experience. Same question. It's February 2020. Your marketing plan signed, sealed, and delivered. And just tell us what happened, what you were doing, and how you switched gears.
Definitely, yeah. And thanks, Lauren, for the intro. Just wanted to let everyone know if they want to look for me on the food blog, it's Vivies, so just Vivvies. So if you need some sweets or treats, just come check me out. But yeah, February of 2020, when we first launched, so M-Plant Productions, we're a portfolio brand in the cannabis space. We launched with, the root of it all, which is the tinctures and topical. It's a condition-specific product line where you can, we have Stop for restful sleep, Slow for relaxation, and it's highly, inspired by Ayurveda and essential oils. So it's all natural and plant-based. When we essentially launched, we were, trying to hit as many new accounts, shelf spaces, just, hitting the ground hard. We wanted to really blanket and sweep all of California. But as soon as the pandemic hit, it was really about, okay, quality over quantity, right? It was, how do we really ensure that all of the accounts that we do have already have, shelf space in, how we're really giving them the love. So from a sampling perspective, we have small tinctures that we were providing samples for people to taste. A sublingual tincture goes under the tongue, so that it can dissolve quickly. Sometimes if you have an edible, it can take anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour to feel the effects. Whereas a sublingual tincture, it's very consistent, it's dose friendly. You can feel the effects depending on, your metabolism from anywhere 12 to 15 minutes. So we were sampling, of course, any opportunity that we could at the dispensaries that, we were hosting our demos, or PADs, otherwise known as a Patient Appreciation Day. But as soon as the pandemic hit, there was no sampling at all. We actually took a major pause, especially here in California. There were some shops that just shut down completely, and some shops that were totally just, swept off their feet with so much foot traffic. So it really just depended on the area and the market that they were in. As soon as we could safely start scheduling our demos again, we entered back in, and we actually have non-dosed samples where it's essentially just the essential oil aspect without the cannabinoids. So we were giving those full-size tinctures away to people at our demos, which they could then try, at home, fully sealed, at their own leisure.
Yeah, so we've learned a lot this year. We've learned a lot about how to address consumers in new ways and how to break through. And with your samples and with thinking about how do we carefully and safely give samples to people, but also how do we engage in a way that creates that connection, because we're all here to create a connection that drives our business forward. How did you, what were your key learnings that drove you to, hey, we need to actually approach this in a different way as far as how we sample?
Definitely, yeah. And I think that, again, we've talked about this at some point before, and I've talked to a lot of other field marketers about this, is that there's a difference in how you speak to someone from a conversational standpoint when you're an existing, well-known brand, right? Everybody, I also, like Lauren, worked at Red Bull. Everybody, for the most part, knows Red Bull, unless you've been living under a rock or if you're somewhere very, very, far away from any sort of advertisement. But when you're a new brand like ourselves and the root of it all, and especially when our key messaging in the beginning was we were an Ayurvedic sublingual tincture, people were like, what? So it's like those conversations and that face-to-face interaction is always important when you're a new and emerging brand, but especially when you're in a new category that a lot of people may have probably heard about it, but they definitely don't understand the benefits, and they're not even fully, educated on the process in which this product is meant to be consumed, right? Beverage is beverage. It's like, okay, Red Bull again at the bar, but a sublingual tincture that's a condition specific, it's targeted for functionality, it very much so, sealed the deal that we're like, field marketing is so important because it's not just us marketing something out in terms of our key messaging. 90% of the time, as we mentioned, the opening sentence in our key messaging, someone would have a question, probably 5 questions. Then from there, we got to product development, our story, our key point of difference, and then of course price points. And it was, that's part of the reason why I fell in love with field marketing in the beginning, was that for me personally, I always knew I didn't want to sit at a desk from 9 to 5. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but for me, I was like, I can't do it. So being able to go out into the field and talk with people, and when you really, are with a company and, behind a product that you really believe in, it's not so, to me, sales driven. It's really kind of like, I'm telling you about this product that I really believe in, that I love. So for us, more than ever, that face-to-face interaction was super, super important.
Vivian, I just want to,
and everybody, go ahead, Tony.
Oh, Vivian, I just wanted to bring out that point. As a startup and also as Mr. Black is an ultra premium spirits brand, especially in the ultra premium category, very few people are willing to spend more money on a brand they don't know or haven't tried yet. So field marketing is even more important in this category, because in order to sample, I've seen other brands who didn't have a successful, they did not invest in field marketing during COVID, and their sales have decreased or gone down, or they'd never invest in field marketing at all. They just focus more on social or digital. And you really need for a consumer to spend that extra $10 to $15, $20 on your product. They need to try it first. They need to be able to sample it. And that is really important. The only other way we've seen it work is by deep discounting. And that's what most of the national brands are doing. They're discounting their brands at like 50% in order to increase the same volume that they had in the year prior. So it is important. Field marketing is so important. And I'm glad you brought that up point.
Yeah. And that I've seen that too, deep discounts. And I think that, of course, if a new business or a startup is able to do that, they probably could, but it's when you're new and then you drop your price points, it's so much, it's more difficult to raise that price point to what you actually want the market to see later on, right? It's like we're setting
exactly.
Like, Mr. Black is a premium product, so it's hard to kind of to bring that standard back up in pricing once you've launched with that initially.
Well, and it also becomes more difficult. And Vivian, I'm going to give this to you. How it becomes more difficult to define success when you're discounting your way to sales. And listen, there's a value to that as well, especially when field marketing is a part of a larger relationship with a retailer. But would love to know how you're able to define success within the organization, within your field marketing. What does success look like for 2020 and 2021? And and including staying connected to consumers.
Definitely. I mean, that is the $1 million question, right? So I think if I would have asked myself that question a year ago, I might have said that defining success is getting as many new accounts as possible, right? But then we had the key learning that what do you do if you have 100 accounts with products sitting on shelves that isn't moving, right? So I think that there has to be a really happy balance of, first of all, your company is all. It
becomes more difficult to define success when you're discounting your way to sales. And listen, there's a value to that as well, especially when field marketing is a part of a larger relationship with a retailer. But would love to know how you're able to define success within the organization, within your field marketing. What does success look like for 2020 and 2021? And and including staying connected to consumers.
Definitely. I mean, that is the $1 million question, right? So I think if I would have asked myself that question a year ago, I might have said that defining success is getting as many new accounts as possible, right? But then we had the key learning that what do you do if you have 100 accounts with products sitting on shelves that isn't moving, right? So I think that there has to be a really happy balance of, first of all, your company is all systems of go. It's not only just for us, it's very tricky because, and it's really the same thing in beverage too. If we take a step back and we look at production, we have to be able to forecast production, inventory, sales, and then velocity, right? If we bottleneck ourselves and are not forecasting our production correctly, we're left with a huge problem because we have too much product that is sitting in stores that isn't selling, or and probably better problem is that you're selling through, but you don't have enough product to fill the empty shelves. So I think that success for us moving forward is really finding that balance while still being very very truthful to ourselves in light of COVID of what's realistic. So currently, we have accounts that we have really great relationships with, but as I mentioned, because we're a new brand and we had a pause in our demos, people don't know that we're there. If you happen to ever step into a dispensary, same thing, or maybe you're looking at the kombucha shelf in the grocery store and say you're a new user, you're a little overwhelmed. You're like, I don't know, besides maybe if it's a pretty label, what I should go for. Or maybe it's a friend that's recommended it to me, or maybe I've seen a commercial. So I think success, is again, field marketing is so important in parallel with digital, marketing space to really not only have a touch point with the consumer, but then showcase to them, this is who we are, this is what we're about, this is why we love our products. Are we a good fit for you? And we're not necessarily saying we're for every single person, so it's really, finding success in ourselves setting up a platform so that we can be ready when we meet that person to make that connection, to have sort of like a merging, of a perfect handshake, perfect place, perfect time.
Right. Well, and right now in early stages, you're really trying to find your raving fans. You're trying to convert those people that will convert other people, and so being really targeted is so vital. How have you used data to define success or to track your performance from a field marketing perspective or from a holistic marketing perspective?
Yeah, we definitely look at it from both funnels. And Pinata really has been great because, with the dashboard, we were able to customize specifically to what we needed to see, So in regard to, for example, demos, we actually launched 2 more brands during COVID. Everyone was like, you guys are, I don't know if this is crazy in a good way or a bad way, but we did it. So we actually had a soft launch of 2 more brands within the portfolio. And we really needed to be able to see, first of all, where are the accounts that these are being sold? And then really, looking at the return of the actual demo. As I mentioned, some of our dispensaries were totally flooded with foot traffic, whereas others were sort of hearing crickets, So we had to be uber strategic in first understanding our placement. And then from there, equipping our brand ambassador team or go-getters in the field with knowing what questions to ask. This is, again, not just a sell-through point for our product, but it's an opportunity for us to learn and really get real-time, consumer marketing feedback. Is this even a product that you would purchase on your everyday? And maybe it was pre-pandemic, but maybe it's not, now that you're home, 24/7. So it's also a balance of that as well. It's like, this is our new normal, but the data points that we're really looking at is day to day. We look at Pinata the next day and we have to be really, really close to the project in the sense of understanding how did this, dispensary perform? How did this dispensary perform? And we even look as closely again as the time frame. I think it's, probably the same thing for Tony is like, we kind of get an idea with grocery, when they're busy, right? Usually like the downtown LA store used to be busy all the time during the week, Monday through Fridays, especially at lunchtime are slammed. But now with the pandemic, everyone's working from home, those shops are virtually empty. So it's really understanding that territory as well.
So it's getting down to the store level, and Pinata and the data that you get from Pinata is a way that you can determine that. Tony, you've used the data that from Pinata also to release some new line extensions and new brands, but talk a little bit about how you use data to define success.
Yeah. So Mr. Black just recently launched our own D2C. So as part of the 3-tiered system, we don't get to see as spirits brands, who our consumer is, who's actually buying the product, because we sell to distributor sells to the retail sells to consumer. So unless we do these field marketing activities or our direct to consumers or paid social, we're actually seeing who our real customer is, what markets we're selling the best in, what cities, even granular data. What's great about Pinata is we get to see those actual sales results immediately on a centralized platform, versus before I worked with different agencies. We had a different agency in every different city. We get a report in for all of them, and there was no way to combine it all and then compare it to our actual sales data we got from our depletion data. So it never talked to each other. So now it's really easy with Pinata. I can look at a store on how many bottles were sold at a tasting, and then look at our depletion data and look at how many cases were sold through, and I compare it apples to apples and really get that data, and like, oh yeah, this sampler actually helped sell X amount of cases. I had this one recap. She said she called the store and she said, I can sell 3 cases, and she actually sold 2 cases, and the store was hesitant about buying those extra cases, but they bought it. So we actually know why they bought those, why that store was doing so well is because of Pinata and because of that ambassador. And we actually do an incentive program where we reward the ambassadors who work for us. Whoever sells the most amount of bottles per tasting per month gets a $100 gift card. So it encourages all of our ambassadors to sell the most bottles possible. And it really showed a longevity over the brand. Yeah.
I want to make sure everybody's hearing this, because this is a little unconventional, but it's really awesome. And Vivian, I don't know if you guys employ this same kind of tactic, but incentivizing brand ambassadors. You have these people that are talking directly to the consumers and incentivizing them to also be an ambassador to the retailer. That to me is, I mean, I didn't grow up with that type of marketing. But think about how powerful that is. I mean, an extra case per store, per demo. I mean, think about how that can really create some velocity. Anything else you want to add before I let Vivian weigh in on how she's using brand ambassadors to support sales?
No, go ahead, Vivian.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Tony. And we definitely do the same thing, because as you mentioned, our product isn't coming straight from our warehouse to the retailer. It goes through the distributor. So we actually have incentives all over the place. We have distributor incentives, brand ambassadors incentives. We also have store incentives with our partners. So, and we think that it's an extension, right? That the term brand ambassador really is just, if you love our product and you believe our product, we're trying to create that trust mark that we feel they will talk about it if they believe in us and they like the product, so very much so. And I know that Tony and I have talked about this before, and the same thing with, whether it be a cannabis product or, alcohol, wine, and spirits, is imagine you go to a bar and you want to order a drink and you ask the bartender, what's good here? What do you like? And the bartender suggests, Mr. Black or, this, and the customer is probably going to say, great, I'll have that, so all of our efforts when we're trying to place products in these shops, whether it's a bar, whether it's a dispensary, is almost like, the very, very last piece of like, oh, didn't make it because that bartender or that bud tender, isn't your extended brand ambassador, right? For us, very much so. We're not in the dispensary, we're not there all the time. Our demos are usually, a few times a week, 3-4 hours tops. And outside of that, we're not there. So we really rely on those bud tender relationships for them to be that extended arm, that sort of extended person on our team to tell customers about us. Again, as we mentioned, because we're so new, and because most oftentimes when customers go shop at dispensaries, they're overwhelmed. They're like, I don't even know what I'm looking for. Like, what do you recommend? So very much so, those relationships are very important.
I just want to answer a question really quick to the chat. So I do ambassador training calls before we do big tasting programs for each of our programs before every round. And you'd be surprised, people ask the same question where ambassadors can be demotivated because they're in a small market. It's like, actually our number one ambassadors come from small markets because they are so motivated to sell and win these incentives. We had one of our top stores is El Paso, Texas, which is a small area, or Jacksonville, Florida. They're selling 18 to 24 bottles at a tasting. I had this one small store in Dallas that was in a mall. They have no foot traffic, but we had launched a new product, which is our gift back it's called the VAP. We had a new store, new distribution, and that sampler sold 30 bottles in that one tasting because everyone was so excited to sell it. So it doesn't matter where it is or where in the market. It depends on the person and the sampler and how motivated they are. Our average number of consumers sampled per tasting is 25, and they're selling. If they can sell they're selling 25, sampling 25 people, they can sell 10 plus bottles. So it's crazy what they're doing now in this market, and it's really working.
I think it also leans into, who doesn't think Tony has great energy and Vivian has great energy? I think some of it's about how do you recruit, how do you train? You put your finger right on it there, Tony, when you have the right people and when you source carefully, then you have people and you train them and motivate them and put the right incentives in place. So sometimes it's about what the incentive is. But I think that training and giving them all the tools that they need to be successful, they can see the value out of that right away. So we're going to open up Q&A. So start thinking about your questions, and you can start putting them into the chat. I do want you guys to close out with one last thought, which is, Vivian, I'll go to you first. What does trust look like? How are we going to build trust? And how are you looking at the future of field marketing? I think we all agree that being connected to our consumers is a part of the marketing mix that's vital to growing a brand and of any size. You mentioned Red Bull, a health aid, and then brand new products and premium products. So what does trust look like in late 2021, 2022? And what are you doing to set that up for success over at Implant?
Again, so I think that, with these new products, I've been really lucky. We actually have the Root of It All, which is our CBD product line, which is now available nationwide. And also Mystify, which is, a very premium luxury vape pen. And I've been really lucky with Implant to be a part of these products from its inception. So being able to see, the build out of key messaging and brand guidelines. So first and foremost, from like a business, whether you're a startup or if you're working in a startup with a new company is really bogging down and knowing what that is, right? Because sometimes that can change. Sometimes, I've seen friends work at companies where it's like, oh, this is a juice company, and we kind of shifted back and forth, So creating that trust mark is first understanding internally, like who we are, what we're speaking about, how we really relay that key messaging out to, others where they can actually digest and understand it. And I think to the wider audience, creating that trust mark is consistency. So for us, from a field marketing standpoint, is showing up, and being able to speak on our products and educate people about our products, in a very relatable way. I think that that's what field marketing is really, helpful in the sense of is when you see someone at a demo, you're more often than not getting information about the product that's not on the website, that's not in a brochure. You're hearing about the brand story from someone who's heard it, because they know the CEO and they know their background. Like our CEO, Scott Mandel, actually came from a background in CPG and, previously started Enjoy Life Foods. So he actually pioneered for, the gluten-free category, back in like early 2000s when people were like, what the heck is glutton? So it's like you're kind of able to hear these stories about, it's like, oh, their CEO actually has this background. And that's his story with gluten-free. And now he happens to be in the cannabis space where, he's backing these products that are backed by science, So that's what a trust mark is to me, is almost, the undermakings that are within the DNA of a company that you eventually get through word of mouth. And sometimes you see them in a brand book or on a website. But it's, for me, it's sort of those little inner workings that people will hear about and they then share that really builds trust about the brand.
So that it goes back to some of the basics, some founder stories,
Yeah.
Understanding the foundations of the company and where throughout the product creation process, there's the ability for the consumer to trust you, just something you would share anyway. And then,
Yeah.
And then of course, things like PPE and having a clean setup and things like that.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. And especially in cannabis, it's like our third party testing, like we're very, very transparent. I think that for a lot of new users or new consumers, sometimes in cannabis, it's like we definitely still, there was the black market and there are things that were, done illegally, but we're obviously trying to move, we as an industry, we want to move away from that. We want to showcase that, there's definitely a lot of legality and a lot of, the right way to do it, and we want to be able to educate people in that process.
Absolutely. Tony, how are you going to build trust for Mr. Black? What are the tools? What does trust look like in the future?
We've had a really great success in our direct to consumer stuff. We've been able to, we're working, our consumer side of our brand business is building that audience for us, and expanding it to not just the states we sell in with our distributors, but to the whole country, where we can legally sell spirits brands to ship to their states. And it's creating that messaging that appeals to what we've learned is our core demographic of people who are buying Mr. Black online, who can't get it at their local grocery store. And actually COVID has actually got us to that point where we can actually ship people wanting to buy liquor, especially premium liquor, online and ship to their house. And that's really how we're building trust right now and growing our audience is through these new digital media tools. We've also done is our national brand ambassador, who used to be building trust from bar to bar locally in our top accounts. Now he switched to become a YouTube ambassador. We created our own YouTube channel. He's creating trade advocacy to everyone, both consumers and trade, and building the brand and loyalty that way. We're working with other YouTube people and the credibility of the brand that way.
Awesome. So it's taking like the online, offline, and offline, online to just bring everybody together. I think the other thing that's really important is, how do you get your product into people's homes? So, like what we're looking at is how do mom squads, or how do you build communities of brand ambassadors that aren't necessarily doing demos, but are responsible for connecting with their friends or connecting with their communities, or, for kids brands, things like connecting with moms at their child's school. So you'll see more brand ambassadors or larger communities that are supporting the online, offline, content creation as well as connections, because we have to find ways to get into people's homes. We have to find ways to get into people's communities. And I think that that's going to be really powerful. So we have,
and that is the at home. The biggest trend was the at home consumption. It's like people want to make cocktails at home, but they don't know how to, because they're used to getting it at a bar.
Overnight our needs changed, right? Our needs went from, I need to make plans and how do I get into the greatest restaurant or the coolest, speakeasy or whatever. It switched from that to how do I increase my health? What are different things that people are doing to, to make themselves more healthy? Maybe I should look at this CBD thing if my friend's using it and feels like it's, making them less stressed or less anxious. And also how do I create a special moment at my house with my family or my friends, my bubble? How do I create special moments without the ability to leave the house or without being able to go to that cool place? So it's looking at how people's needs have changed and figuring out what need does your brand and your product actually solve.
Exactly.
So we have so many good questions. Some of these are directed to one of the panelists, and I'm actually just going to open up the floor. So one question is, how open are consumers to sampling during COVID? Like, what are you seeing as far as an openness to taking a sample or trying something? There is this sense that people want to get in and out of the store and be quick about it. I don't know about you guys, but I can say from my experience that going to the store is like my one experience of the week sometimes. I'm like Friday night, I'm headed to Target because that's the most exciting thing. So, I think I would probably take a sample just because it's it's an anomaly, it's something different. But how open are you finding consumers to taking samples?
So I don't really have that actual data, but for just looking just from pre-COVID, we were averaging about like 50 to 100 based on the store, the chain, or if it's independent, it was usually about 50 to 100 consumers sampled. Whereas now it's averaging about 25 consumer sampled. So it really depends on the customer and who they are and their willingness to try new things.
What about your conversion? Has your conversion gone up in relation?
Yes. So we were averaging about, before pre-COVID, we were averaging about 11%, and now we're at 17%. So it has definitely gone up, and we're seeing people sell more. And it is attributed to our ambassadors who are pushing the product, but I think the lower consumer samples and the quality of the product, and it's all contributing to everything. But yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Vivian?
Yeah, I think for us, we definitely saw a drop in foot traffic. We weren't seeing as many people, but in regard to openness of trying the sample, we saw that go up because we were offering closed, sealed, non-dose samples that they could take home. The way we were sampling before was, we'll give you a dropper right now just for taste, which they'd have to literally put their head back and try the dropper at the table. And some people were like, nah, I don't want that right now, or I want to feel relaxed later, but taking this home and being able to, try it at your own leisure. And, we really didn't have anyone say no to that.
That's great. So high conversion once it felt safe. How do you make sure that your brand ambassadors and your sampling teams feel safe out in the market?
Yeah, so we definitely have like a COVID protocol in place, like a standard operating procedure. We sort of have, in overall, as the pandemic hit, we didn't have to let anyone go, but our team just became smaller. We had some brand ambassadors that had moved home back to the East Coast. And the people that we did have stay on, we sort of have an A and a B team. So A has their set schedule, they go out. In the event that if someone's feeling even a little bit sick or needs to get tested, we have a B team that can sub in. But we make sure that they have face masks, gloves, that there's plenty of hand sanitizer on hand, just following every procedure that we possibly can, while staying really close to our dispensary counts as well and following, their guidelines and rules. As I mentioned, the foot traffic kind of, slowed down. A lot of the accounts that we see are just having most people wait outside, only X amount of head count in store. So we really try and stick with that.
That's great. And your brand ambassadors work for Implant?
Yes, they're in-house. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep. And Tony, I think you have a little bit of a different scenario because most of your brand ambassadors are staffed out, right?
Yes, we only have one national ambassador, and he's based in San Diego, and COVID is very rampant in California right now. So the amount of time he can spend in the field is like 1 or 2 days. He has, during December, he did do a lot of events for us, but 99.99% of our ambassadors are with Pinata through agency partners. We did do a big merchandising incentive program, getting all of our IRCs and MIR coupons merchandise on all the bottles in all of the states that are closed off. We've also seen in the states that are closed off as well, giving them our sales team has provided sample bottles for the clerks to actually pour samples for them if customers are willing to sample as well. Essentially, if it's a new brand, they want to see the product move through and deplete the product, so they will willing to pour the samples and become our ambassadors versus if you can't do tastings.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So again, some really creative thinking. Just a note, Julie and Paige, I believe, are pushing out a poll. So I know we've been on for about 45 minutes, and so we wanted to get a little bit of audience interaction going, and make sure that you guys weren't just. I mean, we've done enough staring at screens for a while, so we'll keep talking. But feel free to jump in on the poll. We have so many great questions. I'm hoping that we can consolidate and get to as many of them as possible. Vivian, can you give an example of, or either of you, can you give an example of like a distributor incentive or or even an ambassador incentive that works well, or even a bartender incentive? You know, when you talk about or the bartender or retailer incentive, how do your incentives work and what works well?
Yeah, I mean, the incentives are always different. So if it's with an existing distributor, we try to switch it up. Sometimes, it's in the beginning, it was a new account, incentive, or if it's an existing account, it could be a case reorder incentive. Sometimes we might do like a team incentive where it's like over the holidays, we had these really beautiful North Face jackets that were, created specifically, for that time of year, that it could be kind of like a swag bag package incentive. So I've found that that's helpful. I think to Tony's point, it really depends on the person. It's like if they're outgoing and driven and motivated, passionate, that they're likely going to take all of those characteristics into anything that they do. If they don't have that, or if they kind of are easily just, like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this. It's like they probably will take that into a lot of, in the event space as well. So I think the incentive is always like a nice bonus, for us. We really try to make it fun. We really try to switch it up. Something that we were doing for our first brand, the root of it all, was like, it was very brand aligned in the sense that, as I mentioned, it's plant-based, Ayurveda, all natural. We were gifting a spa package, to whoever won, they could go get a massage, near them. Now that it's, pandemic, we're really trying to do a lot of incentives that are either cash or something that we can send to their home.
Awesome. That's really helpful. So I'm gonna give credit to the people who ask questions from here on out. Caitlin, with June Shine Hard Kombucha, which is delicious, by the way. She's using Pinata, looking at ROI, and really is excited about doing like a national DTC outreach and an expansion program. So her question is, as we start to move into the new norm of events, do you still plan on conducting demos at retail, or will you pivot back to larger events, as the market opens up? Tony, you want to start with that one?
Yeah, so in 2021, we're still planning on continuing our demos. We're going deep, investing into Florida and Texas in those retail stores where we have national chains that allow in-store tastings. But we're going to really hold back on our large scale events because there's not that direct correlation to return on investment. Whereas when in-store tasting, we can see a direct correlation between number of bottles sold and the actual depletion report in our visitor distributor. With these big national events or local trade events, you really don't necessarily get that same ROI. You like get people 2 million consumer sampled, but it's very general. It's like you don't know how many people are traveling to retail and how many actually go and buy the product. We do have some trade events scheduled for like June, like BCB, which is really involving Mr. Black back into the bar tender community, which is so we're hoping to get that back involved again, and hopefully we're seeing in Texas and Florida, seeing our distributors and start some more industry events as well. So we're hoping to get like some golf course participation events. So we're going to start doing some more of those as well, but with some sealed samples, hopefully participate as a sponsored whole event.
What about you, Vivian? Is there talk of going back to events, or staying pretty close to your customer and converting right there on site when possible?
Yeah, we don't have any immediate plans for large events, but it is in the plan. We need to do both because, I think they both serve different purposes. So from a store-to-store level, it's, supporting the account and also, educating the consumer. I think these larger events, when you select something that's really brand aligned, again, I'll use the Root of It All as an example. We probably go for a Wanderlust Yoga Festival, or Wanderlust Yoga Series, where it's really a brand awareness play. If we're able to sell products on site or have an exclusive promo with them, that's definitely a plus, and we want that sales volume and velocity as well. But again, because we're such a new and emerging brand, that's also a space for us, to meet a lot of our influencers. And I think we touched on this earlier from a digital strategy, perspective. We've really taken some of that budget for the field events that we don't have right now, that we can't do, and really allocated that towards, social media, brand and influencer partnerships.
That's great. And then also, as you convert to doing online things with YouTube and, creating that content, how is that working? So like, how have you found success in utilizing YouTube or other online platforms to drive trial and brand awareness? And are you able to capture that and, and capture the conversion? Tony?
That's pretty much been a test, for us. Again, as I mentioned, we have a portfolio brand. So we have a number of different brands that all have, not only different products, but they speak to different people. And, we've done a lot of kind of testing with just partnerships that we already had from influencers that we already know. And it's really hard to get, it's content creation is so subjective, like what you think is really beautiful, I could be like, what is that? So, but it's been really fun. We've sort of had, from a social media perspective, a lot of user generated content challenges, fun things that people can do from home. We've tied them to small, cash incentives, as well as swag incentive that we can ship to people, little swag bag kits. So we've really been having a lot of fun with that. I think, again, that's more of a brand awareness play. And it's very much still in its testing phase.
That's
great.
With
Mr. Black, we launched our YouTube, I want to say, not even less than 6 months ago. And from 0 subscribers, we have 1,400 subscribers. When I first started with Mr. Black, we had less than 10,000 Instagram followers. Now we have over 30,000. So we're really growing our audience. Our direct to consumer has become our number one independent growth driver, and selling to basically creating a platform for the brand to see where we can expand nationally, and how we're going to do it in all these new states. So we can test these markets first with our direct to consumer, before we launch it with our distributor and our sales team. So it's really becoming a really great learning for all of us.
That's wonderful. Now this is our last question, and I think this is something that's on everybody's mind. Like there are markets where you're working around restrictions in order to engage with consumers, and I think it's been great to look at how to do that. But one attendee just wanted to know, what are other ways that you can sample or get the brand name out there that doesn't require trial in a supermarket, or in a liquor store? What are some things that you've seen other brands doing or that you've tried on your own that actually gets those samples in people's hands?
Yeah, I can take this one really quick. For us, it's the experience, right? I think that standard demo sampling where you're telling someone, you're giving your pitch, they're trying a product, they might be taking a coupon or something home, is great, but I feel there's a bit of a, I don't know, it's experience that a lot of people can see, right? That they go to a grocery store, they most expect it. They know what's coming. Whereas, again, I'll use the Root of It All. When we pre-COVID, we were having our sort of events, lifestyle events, whether they were public or private facing. We would, host a sound bath. We would invite people to come, try a product right before, and then we would either do breath work or meditation, a 30-minute sound bath, could be a yoga series. And that's what I think is, not only creating a trust mark, it's building a brand. It's really differentiating yourself from, maybe any other product in that category, because it's memorable. People will always remember, oh, that's that product I tried before I did that yoga class, or maybe you went with a friend. So for us, we've sort of tested doing that virtually. We have someone on our team who, is Ayurveda expert and will do, Ayurveda readings or we'll do, like a meditation. It's not quite as effective because it's just, human connection is just not the same when it's over digital, but there's still something to be said about having something that's a little more unique beyond the table.
Yeah, a little more memorable. What about you, Tony?
Unfortunately, as a liquor brand, they need to be over 21 in order to sample or to try something. So it's a little bit harder to have that age verification in order to make sure you're marketing to the right person. And just to give out flyers to everyone, it's really impossible as a spirits brand to do that. You really need to have that verification on age to make sure you're targeting the right consumer so you don't get fined.
Right. So yeah, so you have to work around, your limitations just from the categories as well. So one note, there is still time to take the survey. There's been some really great findings with the survey from Pinata. 81% of survey respondents said that they're dissatisfied with the status quo on field marketing, and that there is an opportunity for data-driven strategic approaches to field marketing. I think that's going to be a must. Moving forward, budgets are likely going to get smaller. 38% of the respondents said that they expect smaller budgets. And then, another 22 said, so let's call that, 60% total said they don't really know what to expect from their, from the field marketing budget. But I think Tony and Vivian, you're two great examples of companies and organizations that are doing a really fantastic job of looking at what's possible, working within your boundaries, because you're both working with regulated categories. And thank you so much for sharing how you're working through this. And thank you so much for having us today. I believe Paige is going to share the feedback from the poll. Thanks so much for participating. I'm just really thrilled and honored to be with everyone today, to see everybody, even though it's virtually, and to share time with Tony and Vivian and with the team at Pinata.
Thank you, Lauren.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining. We had such great poll results. We'll be reaching out to answer any of those questions that you submitted that we didn't get to. Please reach out to hello@gopinata.com.